I am back with my most recent encounter with whatever's been following me, but first, some backstory for those who have not seen my previous posts. When I was 14, I encountered something in the woods that seemed to attach itself to me, even following me to France when I went on an exchange trip. This presence, while it always made me uncomfortable, never showed itself to me, nor did it cause any typical events one associated with haunting. There were never any foul smells, nothing moved on its own, I heard no voices. The only reason I knew it was there was because I had heard it walking towards me the first night on some ice. I could always just feel when it was there. This went on for the rest of my youth, but it was sporadic and there would be months with nothing. At 18, I moved in with my girlfriend and left the town where all of this was happening. Things just kind of stopped for 3 months. I qualified the time because the number 3 seems to be important here, but more on that later. My girlfriend and I rented a small apartment that was a converted second floor in an older house. The couple that owned the place had turned it into an apartment for their son, but he had moved away, and they decided to rent it out. I worked nights and my girlfriend worked days, so I was alone in the apartment a lot. The living room had 2 walls and these half doors built into it as we used that for storage. They were not really closets, and I don't know what they were originally built for. They had the kind of latch to keep them closed that was sort of a mini doorknob. You had to twist them to open the door, and they were quite secure. Fast forward 3 months to the day of us moving in. I would go to sleep in the morning after coming home from work in order to spend some time with my girlfriend before I had to head to work. I typically woke an hour before she got home so that I could begin working on dinner. It was the middle of summer, and being on the second floor, the apartment was always hot and sticky. This day, it was almost cold. I thought that perhaps while I was asleep, a cold front had come through, and with it, a storm. I went to the living room to turn on the television, and all of the doors and the walls were wide open. I thought nothing of it. I never went into that room, so when I came home, I just figured my girlfriend had been looking for something and rushed out without shutting them. I found the music channel on the TV and went into the kitchen to start working on dinner. Around 30 minutes into my work, the TV shut off, and I went to investigate and all of the doors were open again. I immediately felt chills and felt a heavy presence behind me. I turned, but I saw that I was alone. This was before cell phones, so I couldn't just call my girlfriend and talk to her to distract my mind. I never told her about the doors. I did not wish to freak her out. She wasn't a believer anyway. For the rest of the time we lived there, objects would move around the rooms, though never when I was watching. We ended up buying a house. 3 days before closing, and our day to move in, I was in the bath and the door was closed. Something began pounding on the door with enough force to shake it. I was terrified, and I leaped from the tub, running to open the door. I was alone. Be it fear or panic, I slammed the door shut and returned to the tub. As soon as I turned my back on the door, the pounding resumed. I was forced to finish my bath with the door open. There are so many more events, some of which I've shared already, but none of them compare to what's going on lately. I have had encounters both at home and at my work, complete with the overwhelming urge to welcome something into me, which I've so far been able to resist. I have spoken aloud that it's not welcome, but it only seems to anger it, and that was the case this weekend. We had a small winter storm come through. It was not as bad as the forecast said, but the wind was blowing with great force. This caused my power to go out at 3 in the morning. There was the number 3 again. I know it was 3 because there was a loud bang preceding to the outage that woke me at 2:58. I live alone in a 4-bedroom house. Odd, I know, but the price was good enough to justify buying it. My bedroom is on the second floor, right above the living room. The house was dead silent, as one might expect to be without power. I was lying there, just trying to go back to sleep, when I heard a very distinct voice come from below me. It was the voice of my best friend and former roommate that's now his wife. I would know these voices anywhere. They also live in a different state than I, since I moved away 3 months ago. I got out of bed, ran down the stairs, and found the room empty, of course. I was confused and afraid. Then my mind went back to the presence I'd been feeling. The downstairs was cold, far colder than it should have been, for only gone without power for about 5 minutes at the most. I found myself immobile, rooted to the spot on the floor where my feet were. I shake as I type this because I'm actually afraid for my safety now. Something touched my back in the cold darkness in my living room. It was icy, and I could feel that it was evil. This had the effect of freeing my feet, and I ran outside. I sleep naked, so this was not my first choice of action, but it was all I could think to do. There I stood, in the 20-degree air, with wind blowing around 50 miles an hour and the snow showering down on me, naked and afraid for what felt like forever. I was not sure what my next action should be, and before I could decide, the power came back on. I went back into my house and I turned all of the lights on, like that would matter, and I got dressed. I went back downstairs and I found every door and drawer in the house open. I have not really slept since. I have tried to tell this thing it's not welcome, and I've tried burning sage. I am in constant state of fear now. The Girl in the Mirror. I was about the age of 13 when this story took place. I lived in an old house just on the outside of a large city and was surrounded by cornfields and forests. I had lived there all my life before this happened. It was a dreary summer night, which is mostly normal for the place I live. But on this particular night, something just felt off. I had come home from soccer practice around 6 p.m., and my parents always had me in bed by 8. The night went on as usual. I ate dinner, played with my little sister, and did some weightlifting before bed. I got into bed around 7:45. The story will better make sense if I tell you something about me. I'm a restless sleeper. I toss and turn and get up periodically through the night. I've always had a fascination with the afterlife. Okay, back to the story. I'm not sure exactly what time I fell asleep, but I didn't really have any unusual episodes through the night. This was the first night I slept peacefully in years. I was suddenly awoken by a strange noise coming from the bathroom in my bedroom. Since I had to use the bathroom anyways, I decided to check it out. I thought it might be a mouse or a bat since we lived in the country and the house is old. It has holes in the older walls. I went into the bathroom. I didn't see anything, so I proceeded to use the restroom. After using the restroom, I washed my hands and face, and when I was washing my face, I looked up at the large mirror overhanging my sink. Since there was still water in my eyes, my vision was blurry and I couldn't really see much. But I thought I saw something behind me, but I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I dried my face off and looked up in the mirror again. Right behind me, there was a little girl, clutching my body, almost as if she was hiding from something. Her ghostly outline scared me at first, but as I kept looking, I could tell that whatever was scaring her was coming from the basement. So I walked to my basement door, and I opened it slightly at first, because I was very scared of what might be behind it. This being said, I've lived in the house my entire life, and I've never been in the basement. My dad mentioned to me that it had 3 separate parts, all separate by small windows that you could barely fit through. So I walked down the basement steps and got down to the bottom where the light switch was. I turned it on, and all seemed like it was okay. That was until I heard the sound like crying from one of the other parts of the basement. In my mind, I was thinking, fuck this shit. But in my heart, I knew that I had to see what it was. So I ventured through the part of the basement, and the light couldn't reach the other side where the other room was. It was pitch black. I still heard the crying, but since it was so dark, I couldn't see anything. Something gave me the urge to go to the far corner of the room, because the way the moonlight reflected off of the floor, you could kind of see what little light you had. I walked over to the corner and stared directly into the middle of the room. There, in the middle of the room, was a chair. It had shackles for feet and what looked like to be some type of restraint for arms or something like that. That's when I noticed that there was someone sitting in that chair. I walked closer, only to reveal that it was the same little girl ghost that had been crying previously in the bathroom. She was also crying there, and had needles stuck in her arms, draining some type of fluid into her. All was quiet until she started screaming. It was so high-pitched that I thought it sounded like a siren or something of that nature. She was saying words, but I couldn't make out anything she was saying until she spoke 5 menacing words that made my heart sink. She said,
"Get out, Daddy is coming."
Not even thinking twice, I sprinted up the basement stairs, tripping over my own feet, and fell flat on my face once I reached the top. I got back up and ran to my parents' room. I told them what happened. They went down there and checked everything out. I told them about the chair and the little girl that was screaming. They told me that there was no chair in the basement and there's never been 3 parts of the basement. Me not believing them, I walked back down there and the room I saw the chair in was not there. There had only ever been 2 parts of the basement, my dad said. I told him that I saw, and I knew there had to be some mistake, but I never did see that part of the basement again. I'm 18 now, and I decided to do some research on the house to see if there's any history that could have caused that. I came across an article of a man who had been arrested in 1868 for doing lab experiments on all of his children. After the man was arrested, the police found all 12 skeletons of his children stuffed behind the basement stairs under debris and concrete. Now that I've finally moved out of the house, and I finally have the answers to what I saw that night, I'm finally at peace, but those 5 words still hang over me to this day.
"Get out, Daddy is coming."
The woman in the white dress. This happened just yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm not quite sure what to think of it because it was just so bizarre and unbelievable. So last night, at maybe 11 o'clock, I was walking around my block. My town is relatively safe, so I didn't feel in danger. Plus, it was a pretty night. I had been walking around for 5 minutes when a pale woman with blonde hair and a white dress caught my eye from across the street. She was about my height and looked to be around my age, too. I didn't actually pay attention to her after I first noticed her. When I circled the block again, she was on the same street, a couple of feet in front of me. She was standing on the curb, staring at the cars passing by. Side note, it was a main road, so even the late people were still driving on it. I said hello to her, and she turned her gaze to me. I couldn't see her face super well, but from what I think I saw, she had no pupils or color in her eyes. She just stared at me. After a while, I asked if she was okay. She didn't respond again and simply pointed at the road. I was really confused and I didn't understand. Right as a red car started coming down the road, she stepped into the road. The car slammed into her, and it was a bloody mess. The driver immediately stopped and jumped out. It was a man about in his mid-20s. We both spoke about it, freaking out. He called the police, and I went around the car to see the state of the girl. Once I circled around the car, she was gone. Not gone as in dead, gone as in she just wasn't there. The blood on the road was gone too, but not gone from his car. After the police arrived, they concluded that it was just some big hoax of a kid who didn't know what they were talking about and some guy who went along with it. The blood on the truck was brought to investigation only to be found as paint. Nothing else was put up about it. I'm still not sure if what happened was real. It felt so real, but I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't know what it was, if it was just a dream or if it was real. I remember it like it was real. I feel like I can't leave the house now. I don't understand anything now, and I kind of feel like I'm going crazy. Has anyone else experienced something like this?